Hey everyone, it is another episode of Ask Kim. Today I am coming to you in Minnesota working remotely, and it's hot. I left Texas to get out of the heat, and here I am it's going to be 97 degrees in a couple of days and cooler in Texas. So let's start with today's question. Let me pull it up. Your husband and you lost connection years ago. You've been through marriage therapy for a few years. He still wants to keep trying, says he's trying. After all, no one can change overnight, he says. Only he's continued his bad behaviors, says he's sorry, and it's supposed to be swept under the rug. That cycle over the years has driven you to fall out of love with him. You've prayed your heart out looking to our Lord for answers. Mind you, he isn't a Christian, which made the lack of connection widen. How does one stay in the marriage, living in the same house, pretending they're still in love, when actually you've fallen out of love with him, pretending everything is okay, everything is forgiven, only you can know your own heart and you're not getting those feelings back in this relationship? Okay, there is a lot that I want to address. And first of all, let me just say I'm really sorry that you're in this situation. I want to start with the first thing you said about your husband is saying he's trying, but he can't change overnight, and it's being swept under the rug. This is true for my husband, and I got to tell you, most men, they did a survey one time about what makes a happy marriage for women and what makes it for men. I can't remember who did this study. But for women, it was not surprising. It was connection, friendship, which is what you're talking about, is missing here. And for men, where I would have thought it would have been sex, what makes a happy marriage or a more satisfying marriage is lack of conflict. What it sounds to me like is your husband is running from the conflict or confrontation, and that's the whole sweeping it under the rug. I don't know what bad behaviors, you didn't mention what those are. Depending on the severity of those, you're going to have to draw some hard limits. If he is cheating on you, if he is abusing you in some way, then we call those boundaries. And those are definitely not anything to sweep under the rug. In fact, some of those are hard stops, which might be even moving out until the abuse stops. What I'm guessing from this, though, it's the bad behaviors are frustrating, they're important, but they're not necessarily threatening to your emotional or physical safety. And if that's the case, then I would focus on how you approach his bad behaviors. If it's a conflict, if it's a huge blow up, if your reaction is really strong, as warranted as those strong feelings are, that's going to keep your husband from being able to open up to you. Now, I can be very opinionated and strong-willed and loud when I'm done, so I had to learn how to soften and back up so that my husband could step up. There was a part of me that fought that and thought, why should I have to do that? Why can't he meet me where I'm at? I said terrible things. Why can't he man up? Why can't he just grow a pair? Why can't he whatever? Which was horrible. And talk about abusive. That's verbally and emotionally abusive to him. I was so set in what he needed to change and how he needed to show up differently that I quit focusing on my own. And in fact, I felt very justified in how I was showing up, because I felt like it was in response to him. But all that does is keep you stuck in a cycle of pain and disconnection. I'm not saying that's what you're doing or where you are, but I'm wondering if that's not true. So to summarize that, depending on how bad the behavior is, how hard a line I would draw and where I would set a boundary. But it is a problem when somebody's actions and words don't line up. What I always tell people is when the actions and words don't line up, believe the actions. And so I would just wonder, unless your husband has a habit of lying or deceit, like what's happening here? Why is he continuing and then wanting to sweep it under the rug? So that's where I would do some investigation into that. And you said, how does one stay in the marriage, living in the same house, pretending they're still okay when they've fallen out of love? For one, you don't. I don't believe in pretending for anything. I believe in genuinely, authentically showing up. Now, that doesn't mean I get to verbally vomit or rage or act badly because I'm just expressing myself. You can overexpress, but certainly not pretend or minimize. And isn't that sweeping it under the rug as well? Definitely don't pretend, but don't overreact. Let your husband know that things aren't going well for you, that you aren't sure where you are or what you're feeling, and some things need to change, and probably for both of you. And so I have to address this other part that you said, which is only you can know your own heart, and you're not getting those feelings back. Sister, if somebody had told me the day I married my husband that I would ever not love him, I would never have believed you. And the day I told him I wanted a divorce, if anybody had said to me, Kim, you're going to one day love this man again, I sure as heck wouldn't have believed you, because I was so done, and so done for so long. And honestly, I was starting to have feelings of revulsion and maybe hatred. Like, he was so on my nerves. Every breath he made just rankled me. When he chewed and he was loud, it just made me want to just claw his eyes out. It still does happen sometimes. Your feelings are based on your belief and hope of whether or not things can ever change. And feelings will lie to you. They're transient. They just come and they go. I have strong feelings about this work I do. Some days I love it and I want to do this forever, and some days I want to quit. And sometimes these are seasons of feelings. It's not just a day. So I know your own heart, and I believe you when you say that you don't feel love for your husband right now. And I believe that right now that's true, but I don't believe that always has to be true. I just want to tell you how I feel about that. I wrote something last night because we're in an RV and we're traveling, and this is a very new experience for us. And we're getting so much goodness out of this. But one of the things we learned, there's an RV YouTuber out there that is big on helping people learn how to do this. And he says that if you go out and have bad experiences, because everybody's going to have bad experiences, you have to mind the dips in the problems that pop up, and things aren't going to work, and reservations aren't going to be followed through on, and your car is going to break down, your RV is going to break down. It's just, there's one thing after another. And I'm finding that is so true. If you focus on those things, you want to give up. And there've been a few times where I have been ready to call it quits and go home. But it doesn't last very long, thankfully. We get in trouble in marriage when our expectations don't meet the reality. We get in trouble with life, period, when our expectations don't meet reality. I'm not sure that I would worry too much about my feelings yet. I would try to figure out why your husband's not able or willing to come to the table and have some honest conversations about his behavior. I would want to know if you're willing to come to the table and have some really honest conversations about how you're behaving, even if it's in reaction to him. And I would work those edges before I started worrying about my feelings. Otherwise, your only option is to stay in a marriage where you feel this way or to leave it. And I'm not sure, if I had left it, it would have been the biggest mistake I ever made. If I had stayed in it the way it was, I think I would have withered away to just about nothing. I would have been miserable, and then probably left it anyway later and been horribly bitter. It took us a few years to roll up our sleeves and figure this out, but I'm so glad I did. I sure couldn't stay in an RV this size and travel with this man if I didn't truly love him. So I hope that helps you. Marriage is hard sometimes. It really is, because marriage is supposed to grow us up. It's not supposed to change our spouse. It's supposed to change us. You have to be willing to figure out how and when and what needs to change in you. So that's today's edition of Ask Kim, and love to hear your feedback on that. You can send all your emails to askkim@themarriageplace.com, and whether it's just feedback on what you've seen and heard, or whether it is a question that you want us to ask in the future. If you're enjoying this, I'd love it if you'd hit subscribe. It helps us to stay relevant. So thank you, and remember that change in your marriage has to start with you. Until next time.